As the threat of the Utgardian gods continues to mount, it'll be up to Thor and Loki to repair their shattered memories if they ever hope to stand a chance. What'll happen next? Well, let's hop into the pages of Immortal Thor issue number 7 and find out together, shall we? So then, picking up directly from where the last issue left off, Loki, in their Teller of Tales form, was regaling King Thor with their first journey into mystery. An adventure sadly long lost to the God of Thunder, which is a real shame because this was the first time that him and his sibling had actually come face to face with the Utgardians. After giving the giant Skimir the slip, the two children of Odin made their way deeper and deeper into this strange other world, eventually coming upon Utgard Hall. Thor, of course, is in classic ball-busting mode right here. Ah yes, Utgard Hall, home to the Utgard Steps and the Utgard Door. How do they name these things, right, Loki? Loki actually once again ends up being the level-headed one here who wants to run away, but Thor lets it slip that the only reason he's willing to go on this dangerous adventure in the first place is that he wants to try and find a souvenir to bring back to his father Odin in hopes of doing so will prove that he's an adult now, not a child who needs to be coddled, not some hothead who can't handle more godly responsibility. And yes, the irony isn't lost on anyone that Thor's plan to be taken more seriously is to do the exact sort of thing that makes it so people don't take him seriously at this point in time. Thor and Loki aren't inside Utgard Hall for long when they end up coming face to face with the skeletal Utgard-Loki, who, much like his Asgardian namesake, is a master of magic and trickery. Also, you might be thinking to yourself, geez, we've got two Lokis and two Thors running around in this story now, aren't things going to get really complicated? Well, the writer thought of that. Thor and Loki refer to this guy as Utgard-Loki, and Utgard-Loki refers to our Loki as Asa Loki, again inferring that they are the Aesir gods. Another important thing of note, and something that King Thor had long forgotten, is that Utgard-Loki actually recognizes the young god of thunder because, well, the Utgardians are also in league with Gaia, Thor's mother. Utgard-Loki launches into a whole big spiel about how these Aesir gods aren't shit, and if they're not shit, how could places like Midgard and Jotunheim ever hope to stand the test of time? Thor wonders why Utgard-Loki thinks that he cares so much about Midgard, implying that Utgard-Loki can see the future. To prove their worth, our Thor and Loki end up challenging the Utgardian god to a series of trials. If they can pass them, then they will show the worth of their own godhood. First up is an eating contest and a drinking contest, and while Thor is well known to enjoy a drink every so often, this is the most bitter horn of mead he's ever drank. And despite Loki complaining about how hungry they were since this whole thing began, they end up losing almost instantly to another Utgardian named Logi, and yes, Logi does sound a lot like Loki. In fact, if you know your root words, Logi actually means fire. Now, of course, if you've been paying attention, you know that these trials aren't the only thing at stake right now, because it's after that the comic ends up pulling out further, and we're reminded that Dario Agger, the Minotaur CEO of Roxxon, and his new ally, the Enchantress, are using the very in-universe Marvel comics to spy on our heroes. Essentially, the Enchantress calls this a sort of scrying window. Looking's just one thing too, though the implication is that they'll eventually be able to actually influence the stories however they want to. Now, Thor and Loki might have bombed their first trial, but they feel they'll do much better with the second one. What is it? Well, a good old-fashioned foot race against yet another Utgardian, a young child-looking character named Loki with 2 Ks. Our Loki thinks they have this one in the bag. Unfortunately, the kid ends up moving at supersonic speed before the god of mischief can even tense their legs. Young Thor doesn't do much better either, getting defeated in a wrestling match by the Utgardian nursemaid, a hooded woman, whose identity will actually end up making a lot more sense later. If it seems like these trials were rigged from the get-go, it's because they kind of were, but Utgard-Loki was sure to save the best for last. All Asa, Thor, and Loki need to do to win this competition is lift a cat. Yep, just a simple cat. Well, not a simple cat at all, because the second Thor puts his hand on the cat, it ends up elongating, meaning its limbs never actually end up touching the ground. But why exactly is all of this going on? Why is everything all weird? well, Loki, the teller of tales in the present, is able to demystify this. You see, young Loki and Thor never actually went to the Utgardian dimension the way they think they did. They never actually met the giant Skimir. This was all one giant illusion trick, played on them by Utgard-Loki himself, meaning that our duo never actually fought Skimir, they just kind of split a mountain. That old woman wasn't any old woman, that was death. The Horn of Mead was just the god of thunder drinking out of the very sea itself, and as far as this cat, that's no cat, that's the legendary Midgard serpent. But wait, you're probably wondering, if Thor and Loki had to fight the Midgard serpent, how the hell did they get out of it? Well, the answer might surprise you. Thor basically was just too stubborn to ever relent and admit defeat, even after several embarrassing defeats in a row, and this was actually enough to convince Utgard-Loki back then that the realms were in good hands. At least for this forgotten era in time, though Utgard-Loki leaves with the parting words that the wheel still might very well turn, basically the exact same thing that Torino said to Thor when they first met. Needless to say, King Thor has a lot to think about right now. His mother is somehow in league with the Utgardians and the turning wheel. But perhaps more importantly, as the comic comes to an end, King Thor begins to wonder, if the Utgardians have their own Thors, their own Lokis, then surely there must also be an Utgardian Odin, and oh, what a beast he must be. And so that was Immortal Thor issue number 7, everybody, and much like the issue that preceded it, I can completely respect what Al Ewing is trying to do here as a writer, but at the same time, I wasn't really feeling this 2-pack. Again, I understand that they're trying to invoke what it feels like to hear an old legend, to hear a campfire story, to understand how these stories grow and evolve and change with who tells them. In fact, meta-narratives and metafiction are kind of shaping up to be the major backbone of this series so far, with Loki the teller of tales regaling Thor with a story of a forgotten adventure, while Agger and the other villains are quite literally using comic books to spy on our heroes and mess with them, and the Utgardians are set up to be these big new villains because they were basically the Norse gods before the Norse gods. But time and the turning of the wheel means we've all kind of forgotten them, and their stories have been stolen and or replaced by the Acer Asgardian gods that we all know and love, thanks in no small part to their portrayals in stuff like comic books. It's certainly a very cool and very creative concept. I just feel like I wish it was a little bit more fun to read. I'm sure it will be, now that these 2 issues have basically set up the rules and explained what's at stake, but I can really only give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Not my favorite 2-pack of stories, but I'll definitely be excited to see where the series goes from here, especially because it looks like Thor is going to have himself a big old meeting and reckoning with his mother Gaia.
Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Joel again, thanking you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not check out my Amazon link down in the description. Yes, that's right, the Cape Joel channel officially has its own Amazon storefront now. You can pick up a comic or anything else for that matter, and if you did, you'd really be helping me and the channel. So with that out of the way everyone, I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.